Well, thanks for clicking on to today's edition of the Long Range Discussion Friday, the 13th of January. And we continue to keep an eye on things overall. Are we going to see this turn to colder? And there is interesting flips going on, fights between models and large contrasts in the models as well. The GFS, a model personally that I don't trust as much as the European. I think the European handles cold air, the ridges and troughs, better than the GFS. The GFS tends to have the flow and ridges and troughs moving too quickly sometimes, and I think with the European, certainly very little in the way of change, if anything, regarding next week compared to yesterday's video. Basically, I haven't changed anything in my overall thinking. You can see here the slight push of cooler air in the mid in the upper levels over particularly the northern half of the UK. Temperatures today here at my house struggled to a few degrees above freezing, where the shade of course is. And the sun doesn't reach, the frost remains present, and yeah, it was more like a winter's day here for sure, despite the fact we don't have any snow on the ground. But certainly feeling a lot cooler up across Scandinavia, so Oslo, Stockholm, Helsinki really struggling to get to -1 or -2 degrees, much more typical of this time of year in this region. But we'll skip ahead to Saturday, and the high pressure continues to build in to the UK and Ireland. So basically, what we're seeing is mostly sunny skies, light winds, and of course the cooler mornings with frost is making for a slow recovery in temperature. Even though we are on the warm side of the jet stream, you can see here the jet buckling to the north, trough to the west, filling with cooler air. And of course, what is notable is the fact that we've got this building pocket of cold from Scandinavia that's going to start to progress southwards into the heart of central and eastern parts of Europe. But don't be bogged down too much in terms of thinking this is going to be a warm pattern or a warm weekend over the UK. This is typical for this time of year when you've got a bubble of high pressure overhead. Nothing Arctic, nothing particularly cold, even at nights when we're seeing temperatures dropping to maybe -2 to -5 quite widely in inland areas under the clear skies. Of course, clear skies and light winds allow any warmth that's been generated during the daytime to escape back to space. It's called radiational cooling. That light wind is allowing the air and the warmth to escape back to the starry sky at night. But certainly by daytime, despite the sunshine, that low angle sun and of course that colder start in the mornings is making it harder for the atmosphere to then warm up. But like I say, it's not a particularly cold setup for the UK over the weekend, but certainly back to more normal conditions rather than what we have seen. But let's skip through the next several days. By Sunday, you can see the ridge of high pressure overhead, the deepening of the cold pool over Eastern Europe, and that is quite notable, and it's been persistent, folks, for the past 5 days. That cold pool has not shifted, has not wavered any with this European model. Makes me think it will happen without any doubt. By Monday, you can see here, even though we have got ridging over the western half of the continent, that air mass is not that particularly warm. So therefore, it makes me think we are going to see a persistency in temperatures much more normal for this time of year. And of course, that ridge or that pool of cool trough. Arctic air, by the way, this is going to be an Arctic air mass that's in place, not just a cold one, but an Arctic one. That's notable. Notice how the ridge and the high pressure tries to push over top of this cold pool. But let's skip through particularly the Wednesday period. I'm shaking here. I apologise for the shaking. I don't have the shakes here, but this camera is a lot more susceptible to any kind of movement with the camera, so I apologise for the shaking that's going on. But you notice here, folks, that ridge is starting to flatten out, and the reason being is we've got a trough here over the North Atlantic which is filling with cold air more off the North American side and Greenland, and that there is a notable feature that we are going to be paying attention to later down the road. Notice the cold continues to penetrate Eastern and Central Europe. That is a very chilly looking air mass persistent over the eastern half of the continent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip through by Thursday. And notice here that trough starts to sweep into the UK and Ireland. Again, the cold over Eastern and Central Europe persists. We do have what appears to be a wee tongue of milder air trying to get pushed in. But this trough here is going to penetrate southwards into the UK and Ireland. So that's by Thursday. By Friday, notice here how the trough deepens, much cooler air over the UK and Ireland. That would suggest to me that by Thursday we could be looking at some snow. Details, folks, don't ask me. I don't have a clue about details of where snow could happen. But I think that map is looking a lot more conducive to winter-like weather across the board and across the UK, mainly across the north in particular. Notice how Scandinavia, the pool of cool, starting to kind of moderate here over southeastern Europe, but more towards the north. That cold is actually intensifying. That looks like a very, very cold air mass over Norway, Sweden, Finland, into the Baltic nations by Friday. Very, very cold indeed. Let's look ahead at Saturday. And yes, the deepening of the cold, of course, the cold persists over Scandinavia, but that is very cold looking for later next week. Highs, folks, if this materializes, and I am buying this at the moment, I am buying this idea that later in the week, notice how region or heights start to rise over Eastern Europe. The cold transfers back up towards Scandinavia from where it was here in the early to mid part of the week. But notice the region here taking place over the North Atlantic. That is very interesting indeed here. Warmth pushing up, very cold air over eastern parts of North America. They will have by this stage a very frigid air mass over the eastern United States. Very cold air over the western part of Europe. Teleconnection, folks. Yeah, I think that looks as if that could be the case. We could be looking at that. Eastern parts of Asia, by the way, will also be very cold by next week. That teleconnection over the hemisphere starting to show itself. By Saturday into Sunday, notice here, folks, again, it looks as if it's cold. And even the blues from Scandinavia are starting to show up over England as well. So, a very, very interesting part next week. I do believe, and I have had a quick chat over email with Joe Bastardi, basically asking him, you know, heck, am I barking up the wrong tree here with regards to the cold next weekend? He confirmed that he believes, and he, by the way, is one of the best forecasters in the world for long range, in my opinion, and he echoes that the cold will be over the UK and Ireland starting next weekend. So next weekend, we will see much colder weather over Western Europe. So, there you go, I've committed myself. Hope you have a great evening, folks. Continue to check back to the blog, Facebook, Twitter. All the updates will be there. Have a good evening, folks. Bye-bye.